Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners for the month of August 2019. The Board of Commissioners did meet in executive session from 6:30 to 7 this evening to discuss real estate, personnel, and also legal matters. I would now ask our Township Manager and Secretary, Dave Berman, to please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Here.
Mr. Oliva.
Here.
Mr. McCluskey.
Here.
Mr. Siegel.
Here.
Mr. McGarity.
Here.
Dr. Hart.
Here.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes. Here. And Mr. Lewis.
Here. Thank you, David. Could all please rise and join our Deputy Chief Joe Hagan in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask that we have a moment of silence
I
for
was going to do that.
Dad, Dr. John Holmes?
Thank you. Well, let's combine that if we could. I was going to divert from the agenda to serve a moment of silence in remembrance of the families and victims, the 30 victims who tragically died in the mass shootings in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, and in Gilroy, California. So if we could all just take a moment to reflect and remember. Thank you. Also want to divert from the agenda a little bit because I want our residents to know that this Board of Commissioners back in 2018 passed a resolution dealing with common sense gun laws. And I'd like to read a portion of that into the record again tonight. This was a Resolution 2091-2018, and I'll skip the whereases, but I'll get to the substance of the resolution. And I'd like to start by, it starts by saying, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Haverford Township registers to its state and federal elected officials and to the President of the United States its strong support for laws that, number one, prohibit persons convicted of domestic violence crimes, including violent misdemeanors, or who have a domestic abuse restraining order in force against them to transport, receive, or possess firearms or ammunition, and enact laws that require prohibit domestic abusers to turn in firearms they already own. Number two, permit courts to require a person to surrender his or her firearms if there is a clear and convincing evidence that he or she has used, displayed, or threatened to use firearms or dangerous weapons. Number three, restrict the sale and possession of firearms by mentally ill persons if there is clear and convincing evidence that he or she has used, displayed, or threatened to use firearms or dangerous weapons, or otherwise acted in a manner demonstrating that he or she may use firearms or dangerous weapons. Number four, require gun owners to report lost or stolen handguns within 48 hours of the time he or she knew or reasonably should have known of the lost or theft. Number five, prevent known and suspected terrorists, those convicted of violent hate crimes, and those with a history of domestic abuse from illegally buying guns. Number six, require universal background checks on all firearm sales and transfers of ownership, including online and at gun shows, with all background checks to be performed through a federal firearms licensed dealer. Number seven, require trigger locks on all firearms in houses where children are present. Number eight, ban the sale of military-style assault weapons. Number nine, ban the sale of high-capacity magazines or clips that hold more than 10 bullets at a time. Number 10, require any person seeking to own, possess, purchase, or otherwise acquire a firearm to successfully complete a safety training course that includes live firing, a safe handling demonstration, and a written test of firearm laws. Number 11, ban products commonly known as bump stocks that render semi-automatic weapons capable of automatic fire. And number 12, support the availability and funding of mental health and substance abuse treatment so all individuals who are in need of help have sufficient access to these services and the support of enhanced mental health services for children. Resolved this 9th day of April 2018, unanimously agreed to by this board and signed by then President Bill Wexler. And I think this demonstrates our commitment as a board to support common sense gun laws. And I would suggest that we update this, given the most recent tragedies, and to present a resolution next month, maybe, that we submit to our U.S. Senators Casey and U.S. Senator Toomey, as well as Congresswoman Scanlon, and obviously the President of the United States. So I don't know whether any member of the board has any questions or comments on that, but my suggestion would be that we update this and send it off, and so that I know it's a little bit of a not much substance to it, but I think it's important nonetheless that we, as a community, go on record for and in support of common sense gun laws, and that's what we're doing here, as we did in the past, and we'll reaffirm that next month. So, anybody have any comments?
I agree, Andy. I think it's,
I'm happy to take up the role of scribe and to deal with that.
You're pretty good at the whereas, I know that. So.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, I've been involved in the gun control movement since 1917, so I know a lot of it too well. The other
If you could do that.
that it's important about doing these is that I'm working with some local groups, because elected officials find that when there is local support for these types of measures, it is easier for those sort of higher up the food chain to feel comfortable voting for it, because of perceptions that certain groups have more power than they really do. So these are symbolic, but they are important symbols.
Yes, totally agree. Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. You have, Commissioner?
thanks. Listen, I want to applaud you for bringing this up again. I think that, and I want to applaud this board, because we took this issue and none of us disagreed with doing something. We knew that we felt that we had to take a stand and do something to show our elected officials that are way above us that something needs to be done in this country to combat the gun violence that's going on. I mean, you can't go to any function anymore without being totally scared. It could be church, a synagogue, concerts. It's just, it's scary. And so we need to do something. So I appreciate you keeping this in the limelight, Andy. It's very important, I think, to all of us.
Well, thanks to this whole board for their good judgment. Look forward to taking this up next month in the form of a new resolution.
Andy, I just wanted to say that I heard what you said and all the things you said about the semi-automatic weapons and all that, but you're not just saying anything about just a revolver, somebody going to media, getting a permit for a revolver
No, that's-
to have that. I'll give you one example, and this is a quick one. An 87-year-old lady lives up the street from me, and basically, if somebody got into her house late at night, and if she didn't have some kind of a firearm, she would have no protection whatsoever. So in those cases, I defend the fact that they should be able to have a firearm. But you don't need a semi-automatic weapon to shoot a deer or a rabbit or anything like that. So I understand what you're saying, and in that case, as long as it doesn't have to do with taking away the right of some senior citizen or just some plain citizen to take away that firearm of just a handgun. So I understand.
This
Agree with that.
definitely would not do that.
Yeah, make it clear that that's not the intent of this board. It wasn't the intent when Dan.
It says that. It says that.
I mean, I just want to make it clear to the residents that even when Dan
It
brought
says
up,
here, whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens must not be made at the expense of keeping guns away from dangerous people. So,
right, but we also passed that resolution that if someone has their gun stolen, Dan brought this up.
Yeah.
They had to report that.
That was an
weapon.
ordinance. For clarity's sake, yeah, that was an ordinance. We criminalized not reporting a stolen weapon,
Right.
which is a significant part of this board. It is poking a finger in the eye of the NRA, and it is very important, as Dan said, for us to do this at the local level. And it accomplishes two things. It does tell our state officials and our federal officials that it's not just the NRA they have to reckon with, but they have to reckon with the people of Haverford Township and Delaware County and Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who feel this way. And it also emboldens local politicians who themselves may want to take on a greater role and serve a greater constituency. And if we can develop our courage and our bravery at the lower, at the smallest level of government and face down the NRA here, then maybe we can ultimately fill the state houses and the federal houses with people who have not only the courage to stand them down, but actually a track record of doing so. So it's extremely important that we do this at the local level. And I'm proud to be a member of this board where we've undertaken these efforts and will again. And I just hope and pray, and unfortunately experience tells me that this is a futile prayer, that we don't have another city or another town to add to the list of mass gun shootings between now and the time we take up this resolution. So just say a prayer for that.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, turning back to the agenda, agenda item number 2 is the International Overdose Awareness Day, which is on August 31st. And we don't meet until September, so we'll recognize that day. And here to talk about that is Jim McCanns, who's our Director of Paramedics for Haverford Township. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Commissioners, good evening. I'd like to take a moment and ask for some prayers and remembrance, not only for the victims of the overdose opioid crisis, but also those of the rescuers who take care of these cases, and it's been wearing on a number of them. I've noticed it with a number of my own medics. This past weekend, we lost one of those medics, a longtime EMT paramedic, was with Haverford Township until about 2 years ago. Paramedic Jeffrey King was a paramedic with us, started as an EMT at the Lanark Fire Company, and Jeff served in the armed forces, was severely injured in Iraq. And this past weekend, shall we say, the demons of that war have caught up with Jeffrey. And I hope finally he is at peace, as I hope many of the people involved in this whole crisis are at peace. But yes, August 31st, 2019 is International Overdose Awareness Day. Please go to www.overdoseday.com, and it'll show internationally what the events people are holding. There are events here in Delaware County, a number of them in Philadelphia, and as they build over the next few weeks, they'll be shown what's occurring on that website. Just to give you a little idea about Haverford Township's response to this crisis, when it became obvious to the whole state of Pennsylvania and to the nation as a whole in about 2011 that there was an incredible spike in opioid abuse, that it was growing to a proportion that was not manageable. And in late 2014, Haverford Township, Delaware County had played a very big role in pushing for the police administration of Narcan. It's the first time that in the United States that we've had an effort where lay people were given the ability to give a prescription drug in the field to somebody with minimal training. They didn't need a lot of training to do it because this medication did not require a lot of training. But what was tremendous was how rapidly that was put into service. It only took a short period of time until that was distributed. Police officers were trained, and Haverford Township was the first to be fully trained and fully staffed with and fully supplied with the proper doses of naloxone, which was the drug at the time. Now it's Narcan. To give you an idea what kind of response that was, since November of 2014, that's late November, about November 24th, I believe the permission started that we could give this medication, until December 30th of 2018, Haverford Township Police have given 106 doses with 92 reversals. So it's 92 lives saved in that period of time. But the other side of this isn't quite seen, and that is how many people EMS reversed. And EMS reversed in that same period of time 210. Now that's done in conjunction with the police. It's always a combined effort. To give you a little better view, throughout Delaware County as a whole because this effort was a county-wide effort. Came out of the DA's office under Jack Whalen, continues now under Cat Copeland, and it is all police departments are on board and on board 100%. Over this period of time, there have been 4,112 reversals in Delaware County by police and EMS combined. In the world of medicine, I don't believe anything has had that impact ever so quickly. This was an incredible turnaround in events. This crisis isn't over at all. Narcan's not the complete answer. It was just one step. We recognize the one thing we can't reverse is dead, and if we could stop dead, then we could go on to the next phase. A number of people have stepped up in this township. The Haverford Alliance for Drug Awareness has stepped up. A number of grassroots movements throughout this township stepped up. And it's just a remarkable effort of how neighborhoods have come together, parishes and small groups and mothers and fathers who have lost children trying to turn this into something positive, and they have. And we know that because from January 1st of 2018 until June 30th of 2018, there were 358 occurrences, overdoses in Delaware County. In that same period of time, and they were reversals. In that same time in 2019, there were 272. So in 1 year, we have a 24% drop in overdoses. That's just not, that's reversals, but overall, it's the occasions have dropped. And we know the statistics are good. The age range remains consistent. The dose remains consistent. We have a good idea what it takes to turn these around, and we're doing it. And I know that there's efforts within the town for people to provide care to those who need it as well. So this has been a tremendous effort. I know there was great support from our police department, from our police chiefs, from you as the commissioners, back from 2014 until now. The fight's nowhere near over, but we're starting to turn the tide. And I thank you for that, and if you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Chairman. Jim, I want to applaud you because we were the first township to carry Narcan. And that was your direct work with the police. And I applaud you for doing that. Thank God we started doing that. My question is, we have to start reaching our children at an earlier age. What's the school district doing? Do you know, are they, I think we need to show the students how bad this is at a younger age. And even if we have to get somewhat graphic, this is what's going to happen. It's pretty bad. So do you know, are there any, do you do presentations there, or do they ask for, I assume, I have to think that they bring in experts.
Well, I sit on the heroin task force for Delaware County, and one of the programs there is indeed school outreach programs. They have the NOPE program, and the NOPE program is exactly that. It's focused and it's tailored towards different age ranges, and I know that they have been in contact with the Haverford School District. I don't know how many presentations and to what age groups, but I'll find out about that. This week, I actually have 2 days this week where I'm going with the FBI into Camden and Kensington to kind of the root of the problem. They want to talk about what we're doing in the suburbs and and I want to know what they're doing in the areas where the distribution seems to be the strongest. So this is truly an unprecedented effort from all sides, federal, local, state, everybody stepping up, communities. It's affecting everybody. And part of the Overdose Awareness Day idea is to stop the stigma of this. It's on every street. Every family's been affected. I've lost a stepbrother to this. I know family members who are fighting and have fought opioid addiction. So it's out there. And it's time to call for what it is. It is a disease, and we need to continue to fight it. No different than polio or anything else over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for your efforts. Appreciate it. Item number 3 on the agenda is Commissioner Committee updates. Any Commissioner Committee updates?
Yes, Mr. President, the Senior Citizens Council, in conjunction with the Haverford Partnership for Economic Development, is now sponsoring a senior citizens discount program in which many Haverford Township businesses are participating. These include restaurants, stores, and services. Generally, the discounts are going to be offered on Tuesdays. You can get more information at the HPED website, as well as on brochures throughout the township. And it's just one more reason to be shopping local.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart. Any other updates? With the board's indulgence, I would also like to vary from the agenda this evening to receive a report from our township manager, Dave Berman, on our efforts with the last storm that was very severe. And, I think we had almost 5 inches of rain in an hour. A lot of, obviously a lot of damage. So if you would like to update us on the storm and our efforts to recovery efforts.
Thank you, Mr. President. The storm last Wednesday was torrential. We received a huge amount of rain in a very short period of time. The good news is no injuries were reported as a result of the storm, but the bad news is we had widespread damage, in particular Winfield Drive. We had 35 homes that were affected, basement flooding primarily, and within that block there were at least 4 flooded vehicles that had to be towed. John Viola, Chief, and our Emergency Management Coordinator was out there for most of the evening. Fire crews did go door to door. We did advise residents to evacuate, provided assistance where it was needed. Fire crews did shut off the gas to 23 homes that evening. The electricity remained on. We did open the township building as a shelter just in case folks needed to come here. But most residents decided to shelter in place, or they decided to go with family or relatives or friends. Public Works was on location assisting with debris removal, and they were out there for quite some time late last week, and they were out there this morning, and we're continuing to take away debris, particularly from Winfield Drive, but there are other areas of the township that were affected. So it's interesting because you feel like when you're in the middle of it, you're the only one that's getting it, but it was all over the township. Police and fire crews responded to more than a dozen reports of flooding. There were flooded roadways, disabled vehicles, and there were vehicle rescues. Locations: Hillcrest and Prescott, County Line and Biddle, North Eagle and Lawrence, Coopertown and Blakely, Waterford Apartments, Greenview Lane, Haverford and Lorraine, Haverford Road, Vermont and Warrior, Landover and Haverford, Steele and Vermont. There was a significant sinkhole there. Woodmere, Pine Valley, Sunnybrook, Foster, and Merwood Park was flooded. Public Works did provide assistance in many of those locations. We removed trees from Glendale Road, and the Radnor Haverford Marple Sewer Authority reported significant flooding to their facilities. There were other reports. There were others that we've heard about since that day and that are still coming in today. So we're working on all of those areas, trying to develop an action plan. It could have been much worse, and we're expecting more storms tomorrow, as you all probably have heard. And so Public Works crews spent the majority of today out clearing debris from any of the inlets. And by the way, there are a couple of thousand inlets throughout the township, so it's a big undertaking. They're clearing debris. They'll be out there tomorrow, and they'll be in, I'm sure, late tomorrow in the afternoon and evening, available to assist anywhere they're needed. So thank you very much to Dan Mariani and the entire Public Works crew, John Viola, Steve Poole, our Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator, Joe Hagan, the Fire Department, and we'll keep our fingers crossed for tomorrow.
Let's hope we get a break.
President.
Yes.
If I could just remind folks, the 16-foot wide inlet on Winfield Drive that got blocked that day was not blocked by debris that was on Winfield Drive. This got blocked by debris that was as far as a mile away and made its way down in the storm. Everybody needs to be reminded on the eve of a storm like we're expecting on Tuesday, don't just look at the inlets, see if anything's there. Look in your own front yard, look in your own end of your driveway, any work you did this weekend that didn't get picked up. All of that stuff is going to make its way to the inlets, and all of it is going to block the streets. And once that happens, we have the flood that we have on Winfield. If that inlet weren't blocked, we would not have had 40 flooded basements and half a dozen wrecked cars. So it's extremely important that everybody realize that those inlets get flooded by the debris that's in front of our own homes, that's in our own front yards. And if you've seen stuff get washed away before, just make a point of bagging it up now or somehow securing it. There was at least a 24-inch log wedged into that area yesterday. That did not come, that wasn't there the day before. That was just sitting in somebody's yard, and it got swept away in the flash flood that we have. So it takes an entire village to keep an individual street from flooding. So I ask everybody to remember that tomorrow. And once the storm starts, keep an eye in your own neighborhoods. If you see your inlets flooding and it's not dangerous and it's not water that's 6 or more inches deep, go out there and clear it. Even if you're just shoving the leaves into the inlet, they stop the dam forming and they keep the water flowing. So that's all.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, I mean, I talked to our township manager and to this board about significant flooding that we had in the first ward, Harrington, and specifically Windsor Park Lane, where many homes along that stretch, and especially in Windsor, their garages were flooded out and it was going into the homes. So my discussion with our township manager is they're going to take a look at the inlets there to make sure they're clear. So with that storm coming tomorrow, and I think we need to adhere to Commissioner Holmes's advice, we need to start checking and make sure debris is not falling into those culverts or sewers. That's just going to continue to block them. It makes Public Works' job a lot more difficult.
Yeah, well, just want to add, same along the same route there. Along Naylor's Run, we would have flooding there when we had this kind of rain, and residents go out and they clear. When they see it start to flood, they automatically go out and start raking any leaves or anything that's in front of there. So, please, watch the storm sewers and make sure that nothing is blocking them.
Thank you for those comments. Turning back to the agenda, item 4 is the Township Auditor update. Ross Anderson.
All right, I reviewed the warrants and expenditures for this meeting. I found no irregularities, and all my questions were answered to my satisfaction. In addition, I do want to mention that, like last year, the July credit card statement was a little bit higher than normal, but that's all related to camps and other various programs, and it's only off by a couple grand. Lastly, I do want to mention too, with that whole side note with the whole storm drainage thing, we had an issue where it was like a Thursday night, people put out their recycling, and the recycling got knocked over and went to the drain, and next thing you know, it's clogging the drain, and Officer Hagan, who lives like 2 houses down, we were both out there trying to clear it out as the road was like flooding because the recycling was one of the things that blocked the storm drain.
Thank you, Ross. Appreciate it. Number 5 is a citizens forum. We have allotted 20 minutes for registered speakers. We've also allotted 20 minutes for anyone in the audience that would like to speak on an agenda item. It must be an agenda item. And if you want to speak on any topic, you'll have the opportunity to do so under agenda item number 21, which is a continuation of the citizens forum. So we have 2 registered speakers this evening. The first is Amy Moskowitz, the reference manager at the Haverford Library, and recognizing September as Library Month.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Amy.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Amy Moskowitz, and I'm the reference manager at the Haverford Township Free Library. I'm here on behalf of the library this evening to share with you some exciting information about our upcoming events and programs. September is Library Card Sign-Up Month. Since 1987, Library Card Sign-Up Month is held each September to mark the beginning of the school year. During the month, the American Library Association and libraries unite in a national effort to ensure every community member signs up for their own library card. Throughout the year, public librarians and library staff assist members of the Haverford Township community with saving hundreds of dollars on resources and services for infants, students, teens, adults, and seniors. From free museum and zoo passes to 23 local attractions, to access to more than 100,000 books and materials, to free Wi-Fi, free access to mobile hotspots, e-readers and laptops, to hundreds of fun, timely, innovative programs for all ages, to the invaluable expertise of librarians. A library card is one of the most cost-effective tools available to the public. This September, we're hosting a number of events to let Haverford Township residents know the value of library membership. On Wednesday, September 4th, we're showing the film The Public, starring Alec Baldwin and Emilio Estevez. Though this film is about one particular public library, it has a strong message which applies to all. Then, please come visit our library table at Haverford College's Celebrate Community Day on Friday, September 6th, or at Haverford Music Festival on Saturday, September 7th. You can sign up for a library card at either of those events. We will also be at Brick and Brew from 6 to 9 p.m. on Tuesday, September 10th for our first Brick and Brew and Books event. Then on Friday the 13th, we will be at Oakmont Roots from 10 a.m. for library and lattes. Stop by for poetry reading and writing activities. On Tuesday, September 17th, the library will have a table at HPED's Moonlight Dining event on Brookline Boulevard. So if you hadn't signed up for a library card yet, you can get one there. Thursday, September 19th, is our annual business breakfast. But this year, we are proud to be partnering with the Y and hosting it there, where we will be having a ribbon cutting for our newest book drop location. We will close out Library Card Sign-Up Month with a bang. A community drum circle is planned for Thursday, September 26th at 6:30 p.m. No experience is necessary to join this fun rhythm-making activity with your friends, family, and neighbors. We will celebrate music, community, and the fact that we all now have free access to programs, books, technology, and resources 24/7 thanks to our library cards. For more information about these and any of the programs and services that we provide, please contact the library. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in September.
Amy, could I just ask you, I think I've made this request before, but it'd be helpful if you could distribute to the members of the board and to the township a list of those activities so that we can get out to our email distribution list what you're doing. We stumbled upon your fundraiser last Monday night.
Oh, great.
So we did contribute our 10%, but
Thank you.
it was by accident. So let us know what's going on
Wonderful.
so we can get the word out.
Be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next registered speaker is Tim McCall, a stormwater runoff issue resulting from the repaving of Craig Lane.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. I have some handouts that are pictures. Should I?
That's great, yeah.
Do-
Please share them.
I don't have.
It's okay, we'll share. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Great, thank you.
We'll share.
That's perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Here's Jimmy.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Lewis and the Board of Commissioners. I appreciate the chance to speak with you about an issue that we're having, albeit it's not as significant as some of the ones we were talking about earlier in this meeting. I am a resident of Haverford, and I know I only have 2 or 3 minutes. That's why I printed out some pictures for everybody to look at. I live at 48 Tunbridge Road. It's represented by the orange dot on this aerial map. There's a water issue that I believe has been caused by the repaving, the milling and repaving of Craig Lane, specifically at the intersection of Craig Lane and Blakely Road. At the bottom of this map, it extracts the trees and the aerial photography so you can get a better view of what's happening with the water. So in the past, we've lived there for 2 years. We never had an issue in the first year and a half. The water was coming down Craig Lane, going over to Blakely Road, down Blakely Road to Tunbridge Road, and out to the stormwater system. If you turn the page, this is some screenshots from a video. This was probably 3 or 4 storms ago, where the water, this is Craig Lane. It's coming down the side of Craig Lane, and number 1. Number 2, instead of getting out to Blakely, it's going across Craig Lane. And 3, it's now aggregating the water and going right down the driveway of 1 Craig, and you can see the driveway there. There's water already gathering. This isn't even that big of a storm down at the bottom. There's sort of a depressed drainage area that collects water. So what's happening, so if you turn to the next page, it sums it all up. You've got this driveway, you've got water coming in from Blakely that's not going down Blakely, you've got water coming across the street on Craig, and you've got the normal Craig water, and it's all gathering up and blowing down their driveway into that basin. And then at the bottom, you'll see it comes through the tree line, and it's filling us up with, it's hard to guess, tens of thousands of gallons. I mean, the water is coming in so fast that where my feet are, I have a picture of my feet just to calibrate it, that's a graded lawn, and I'm standing in about 3 inches of water. So that's not even a low area. That's rain that's coming in beyond any sort of normal on the property rain. Flip the page, we put in some remediation stuff, which was a 12-inch stone dam across the back of the property to slow the water down, in combination with a 16-inch silt fence, and then 3 large collection drains. Even with that, in a medium rain, it was not enough to handle the water. So sort of as a academic test case, this was not the rain that we were just talking about last week, but the one prior, which was a significant rain, probably the second most significant. We took sandbags and put them across the 1 Craig Lane driveway where we thought the water was coming down. And you'll see this is a familiar picture. And then we also had a camera looking at the back of the pool area where we were getting all the flooding, and it was dry. So the sandbags, when no sandbags, we get blown out with standing water, I mean, thousands and thousands, and then with sandbags, no water. So in summary, it feels like the grading of Craig Lane and sort of through our resident testing has shown that the grading has actually funneled the water into the properties as opposed to taking it down the normal path of Craig to Blakely to stormwater management. We've talked to some it's not a big fix, but I think it's an error on the paving contractor, just sending the water onto the properties rather than off of it. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
Yep.
I don't know, Chuck, I know that Penn Associates is looking at this. We have.
Yes, Commissioner. We did look at that, and we were fortunate enough to look at it in our heavy rain, too. And I think what Mr. McCall is saying is physically what's happening out there. Some of that water is coming in to Craig and then going back out. So we were able to discuss that with Danny and Dave, and we're going to go out there and shoot or take some elevations of that intersection, plot it up, and see what can be done to potentially modify that intersection.
Just get it back to the way it was is what we really need to do. I mean,
I'm not familiar with that intersection, unfortunately, before it was paved, so I don't know if it's entirely due to paving or maybe was like that partially to start with or what, but we'll take a look at it and come up with some solutions.
they've never had water go down 1 Craig.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, we've been there for 2 years, and the first year we never had any water issues of any significance. I've emailed the prior owner of the house, and he said we never had any, ones that stuck in my memory as water issues. And just to calibrate a water issue, so we've had the pool, which is right there, is 3 times already this pre-sandbags filled up with just the road debris. Yeah. So debris coming off of Craig going down the driveway. I mean, it's actually eroding that driveway. Coincidentally, that house is unoccupied right now. So I think if that house was occupied, that person would be sort of here wondering why they're getting all the water.
I've talked to the owner, Jerry Sweeney, and he told me he's very much concerned about that driveway. He said it was never a river. That driveway was never a river
He did
before.
say- okay.
And but he's not going to let you have sandbags in front of his driveway forever. So it's something we have to get resolved, I think. So.
But it seems, I mean, if the sandbags work, it would appear as like some sort of curb grading might work as well, but
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Tim.
no expert. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm wondering, Mr. Faulkner, I mean, looking at some of the areas, I've been there almost 20 years, I've never seen flooding like we're seeing now, even in the first ward. We've never had Harrington look like a raging river like that, and Windsor Park Lane. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I mean,
I know we
there's,
had a lot of rain, I know that, but we also had streets that were milled, I get that too. I mean, can we look at those areas if we send you the videos? Because I have videos of that.
be happy to look at them, Commissioner.
I mean, just to give us an idea of what's happening, what has changed in the last several years? I mean, other than we're getting, other than we're getting a once every 100-year storm just about every other week now, which we never used to have. It was every year. But it seems to be happening every single week where we're getting these significant rainstorms, 5 inches of rain, 4 inches of rain. You know, we could debate why we're getting them, but we're getting them. And all I'm asking for is, I guess, an idea of what's happening, what we can do, what the township can do or can't do. Because residents are like, I mean, they're taking videos of it, they're posting it on Facebook. They're sending me videos of it. I went to Windsor Park Lane. I saw the flooding, which I could not believe. I've never seen that there before. Dan, have you ever been there where you saw that on Windsor Park?
So this storm and the storm of 2009 and a couple others, it's about flow. Our system can handle 4 inches of rain in an hour. We've had plenty of those kinds of heavy, heavy downpours, but not the kind of event we had last Wednesday, not the kind of event we had in August of '09, and not what we had in Hurricane Floyd back in '99. These things overwhelm every system. And once that happens, then they, unfortunately, the problem gets exacerbated by the flash flooding, then blocks more of the vents. The fact is that all of our new construction in town, anything, whether it's a business or a residence, has to improve or make no difference to the stormwater system that we currently have. So there are people who believe that it's, because we've built this area, or we've built that area, but the fact is the construction, especially the huge construction jobs like you see at Haverford College, they include massive retention basins that people can't see that have 700,000 million-gallon capacities. Anybody's effort now to take grass or unimproved lots and turn them into impervious surfaces require, as part of the approval, stormwater management systems. So our systems work. We are just getting more violent weather that used to be accurately called once-in-a-century storms, and now, unfortunately, seem to be, once an Olympics or once a Rocky sequel. But I mean, they're just not once every 100 years anymore. That's for sure. But there is very little that we can do to change the capacity in our system, because our system has very good capacity. It just can't handle these freak, incredible flow storms that happen over the course of 45 minutes or an hour.
And I totally
I
agree
got to
with you.
correct you. It's not the whole township. The 8th Ward, that's the 4th time this summer there's been flooding.
Well, we know that problem in the 8th, but I mean, we've been working on that for
Okay,
2
yeah,
years,
so-
right? Yeah.
So that's not been addressed yet.
Yeah. Well,
We're chipping away at it, I think, a little bit.
I mean, I think everybody's point is well taken. I mean, we can all sit here and talk about whatever storm damage there was last week, and I could share the same about it in the 3rd Ward as well. And obviously, there was flooding on Winfield Drive last week. But the reality is, we just need to look at this as the fact that there's going to be more stormwater issues that we're going to have to address, and we have to try to take, we're not going to be able to snap our fingers for the storm tomorrow, but there has to be some real planning that we have to start in every construction we have, every sort of grant application we have to consider impact of stormwater management, and not only take it where it is now to where if you add impervious surface and you don't make it worse, the township hopefully can take some proactive steps to make it better. Because that's the reality, as Commissioner D'Amelio has said, as Commissioner Holmes has said, and Commissioner Hart has said, we're getting storms that at this point are causing water damage to houses that we're all getting calls from residents, and understandably so, never had water for 20 years, and now all of a sudden they're having water. So that's the reality. And we have to consider that in our budgets moving forward.
The only thing, yeah, and I agree with you. Like, for example, what I'm looking for is maybe sometimes you don't have enough sewer systems that can accept the water. You follow me, Chuck? I mean, I don't know, because I'm not an engineer. If you look at the video, it looks like there's maybe one in one area, and all this water's rushing to it and can't handle it. And if you had maybe another one further up, you know, you may be eliminating all that water just starting to back up over there.
Commissioner, yeah, depending on the situation, it may require more inlets, or maybe it requires some overland relief someplace to get it away from the properties instead of going towards them. And that's difficult to do in many areas, as you know.
Yeah.
Chuck, I
That's
mean,
what he's talking about.
yeah,
That's
but-
planning.
I-
I mean,
I was watching on Haverford Road. It was blowing the manhole covers off. There was so much water in the system. The amount of manholes wouldn't matter. And not the amount of manholes, the amount of inlets wouldn't matter if it's coming out through the manhole covers.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, some of those systems surcharge to the point where under pressure, and they're coming out manholes or inlets and everything, so we got to be careful where you put them. We don't want to cause a bigger problem also. So there's a lot of moving parts with the stormwater in this township, as I believe you all know.
But
I agree
you'll put an inlet in thinking that you're solving the problem, but under pressure, it's gonna, the water may come out through there and cause more.
That's correct. Good.
and I agree with you, Commissioner Oliva, and I agree with Commissioner McCluskey especially, because I think that we need to start looking at these issues and plan. And if we need to add something or divert the water in some way to protect families that have never had this kind of flooding, now are getting it. I mean, we need to look at the ways that we can improve the water flow.
Right, but I don't agree as much. I think we have to start thinking outside of the box and not making the storm sewer system larger, but rain gardens, things like that, you know, and water retention basins, that sort of things is the stuff that I think we.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify.
No, I agree with that.
That's what we should be
It's all
doing.
part of it.
And just a reminder to the board too, the township has received several grants that were strictly stormwater grants. Darby Road Streetscape, we put in an underground basin up there in front of the high school. Chatham Gown Elementary School was a big retention basin up there. There's a few other smaller ones in and around it, trying to address the situation on, you know, a little bit here and a little bit there, rather than a big bang someplace. So you have been successful in getting grants for that, and it has helped. I mean, you know, in a storm of that magnitude and that intensity, you're not going to notice it, but in some of the lesser storms, they do help.
Any other comments? Okay, that concludes the registered speaker portion of the citizens forum. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on an agenda item? It must be an agenda item. Okay. Looking at item number 6, boards and commission updates. If we have anybody, any boards or commission updates? Now I'll turn our attention to item number 7, approval of minutes. Commissioner D'Amelio.
Commissioner, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of July 8th, 2019.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner D'Amelio, seconded by Commissioner Oliva. Any discussion or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Ayes carried 9-0. Item number 8, approval of warrants, Vice President Holm.
Mr. President, I move that we approve warrant number 8 of 2019 totaling $4,715,524.77, comprising the general and sewer fund payroll for July 11, 2019 in the amount of $673,302.79, the general and sewer fund payroll for July 25, 2019 in the amount of $730,083.78, general and sewer fund payroll for August 8th, 2019, in the amount of $687,520.62. General Fund Disbursements Number 8 of 2019 in the amount of $1,617,314.37. Sewer Fund Disbursements Number 8 of 2019 in the amount of $273,742.37. Community Development Block Grant Fund Disbursement Number 8 of 2019 in the amount of $97,642.28. The Capital Projects Fund Disbursement Number 8 of 2019 in the amount of $620,153.08. Pennsylvania Office of Unemployment Compensation Benefits, second quarter of 2019 in the amount of $363.66. A credit card statement ending July 27th, 2019 in the amount of $15,401.82.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Holmes, second by Commissioner Oliva. Any discussion or questions?
Mr. President, our township auditor has been through these disbursements. Any questions he had were answered to his satisfaction. Mr. Anderson referred to the credit card statement as being higher than normal, and he said it was off by $5,000. I just want to clarify that statement. When off, he did not mean that it was incorrect. He simply meant that it was varying by more than $5,000 than we typically see on the credit card statement. And as he indicated, that is a consequence of the front loading necessary for us to do for some of the summer activities and camps that we do. Obviously, it has been paid and gets paid in full every time, so the township never carries a balance, never pays any credit card company any kind of interest. But we deal with entities that require credit card payments, and that's why we have it, and that's why we use it.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ayes carry 9-0.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move that we approve our 2020 budget adoption schedule.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Siegel.
Now, if you'll just give me a moment.
Any discussion or questions? I would like to let the residents know that items number 9 through 20 were discussed at last week's discussed and questioned, debated at last week's work session. So this week should be simply a matter of voting on these items, so these should move pretty quickly, unless there are any questions that come before our commissioner has or some other issue that a commissioner wants to raise. So
I apologize that I cannot quickly put my hands on the budget adoption schedule, but I can tell you from memory that on Halloween, because he always does it on Halloween, our township manager will deliver to us, each of the commissioners, a first draft of the budget. And that will include a preliminary statement from him that gives us, from the township manager, that gives us particular items of interest and the amounts of the significant revenues and the significant expense categories that we have to deal with. We then have a special meeting that only addresses the budget, and that's going to be the third Monday in November. Might be right that it's the 17th. Anybody know off the top of their head?
It's November 18th.
The 18th?
Yes.
So our first meeting, which is strictly for the budget, will be the 18th at 7 o'clock that evening. And our second meeting will be our regularly scheduled December meeting, which will be the second Monday in December, which is
December 9th.
December 9th. Any changes to the budget between the first and the second will be evaluated at that second meeting. And then the adoption of the budget takes place then.
okay, any other questions or discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
You know, Karen, before you move on, I just want to make clear. Before that Monday, November 18th meeting, the advertisement of that budget hearing in the newspaper will include a summary of the budget that has all the major categories of revenues and expenditures.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Agenda item number 10, resolution number 2147-2019, Bryn Mawr Trust Depository Bank.
Resolution number 2147, 2019, Bryn Mawr Trust Depository Bank. Motion to adopt resolution number 2147, 2019, appointing Bryn Mawr Trust as a depository for Haverford Township and authorizing the township manager and the director of finance to open the depository account.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner McGarity, second by Commissioner Hart. Any discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Item number 11, Investment Depository.
Investment Depository, motion to approve township manager's designation of Univest Bank and Trust Company as a general investment depository of Haverford Township.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner McGarity, second by Commissioner Hart again. Any discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Agenda item number 12, ordinance number P14, 2019, traffic, second reading. Get you on that.
It's Ward 6.
It is, I'll take it. I move we adopt the second reading of ordinance P14, 2019, establishing traffic restrictions on the highways, in particular, a special purpose parking in front of 727 Humphrey Street in Ardmore.
Second.
Commissioner Holmes, seconded by Commissioner Oliva. Any discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Agenda item number 13, ordinance number P15, 2019, Grange Estate Extend Lease and Agreement between Haverford Township and the Friends of the Grange, Inc. First reading.
Motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P15, 2019, approving to extend the lease agreement between the Haverford Township and the Friends of the Grange Incorporated for the property leasing, maintenance, and provision of the Grange complex.
Second.
By Commissioner McGarity, second by Commissioner Hart. Any discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Agenda item number 14, ordinance number P16, 2019, Trail Easement Agreement, 3823 Darby Road, first reading.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P16, 2019, authorizing the township to enter an easement agreement for the portions of the property located at 2823 Darby Road for the establishment of trail facilities.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Siegel. Any discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes. I would like to thank Nancy and Al Holm, whether they're here this evening or not, but they, I want to thank them for donating this easement really in perpetuity for our residents to appreciate their generosity and community spirit in helping us expand our trail network for this and many future generations to enjoy. There are not many gifts you can give in perpetuity, and this is certainly one that you can. So it's a wonderful gift, and we thank them for donating this easement to the township. Agenda item number 15, resolution number 2146, 2019, phases 3 and 4 construction of the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission Regional Streetlight Procurement Program.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2146, 2019, that the Board of Commissioners of Haverford Township hereby authorizes the township to exercise its option under the existing cooperative purchase contract with KLS and to proceed to Phase 3 and Phase 4 of the program for project management and post-construction operation and maintenance services. And it is further resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Haverford Township hereby authorizes the township to enter into cooperative purchasing in the form of a contract with Armour & Sons Electric, Inc. for installation of equipment. And it is further resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Haverford Township hereby authorizes and directs its officials, employees, agents, and representatives to take all such further actions and to execute and deliver all such instruments and other documents as may be necessary or appropriate to enable the township to carry out the intent and purposes of the foregoing resolutions and transactions contemplated hereby.
Second.
Hey,
Commissioner Wexler, seconded by Commissioner Hart. Any discussion or question?
I have a question. Dave, do you know that while they're doing this, if there are areas where a light is needed, are we addressing them at that time or no?
I think this is strictly a replacement project.
Replacement?
I mean, where one isn't, and they want.
Yeah, I mean, there's a street, and someone sent me an email ironically today, where the light was taken down and never replaced. So. Well, I'm just wondering if under this, while they're there, they put one up now. You're saying it's just replacing the
This
bulb,
is strictly replacement.
the bulb and the mechanism.
Yes.
But, Steve, I think what I remember from this whole program was that the lights they were putting in are stronger lights, embedded lights than the ones they're replacing, and that as part of the whole township-wide package, there was also kind of a culling of some of the lights, and that when the new lights are put in, we should see improvement, even in those areas where lights came down, because there
here
should
we
be lights
didn't.
on the side, not where you are.
Not in this area.
I'm
Otherwise,
certainly
everywhere
counting
else.
on that working out in Beechwood, or else I'll be joining you and griping as well.
Okay, any other? I'm sorry, do you? Anything else, Commissioner DeMia?
I think he's okay.
Okay,
Okay, yeah.
please call the roll.
I guess I'll call Public Works, right? Or you want to handle it, Dave, if I send it to you?
We'll work on it
Thank
either
you.
way. Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. McGarry?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis?
Yes. Agenda item number 16, resolution number 2148-2019, sewer module 217 Walnut Hill Lane.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2148-2019, authorizing the Township of Haverford to revise its sewage facilities plan, Act 537 plan, by executing a sewage facilities planning module for the addition of one EDU in the Darby Creek drainage system associated with the subdivision of the property at 217 Walnut Hill Lane, Havertown, PA, where the existing single-family dwelling will remain and one new building lot will be created. And then I have a question after.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Emilio, seconded by Commissioner, you guys kind of.
Everything on that property has been cleared as far as there were trees that were diseased and coming down, do you know?
They need this before they can record plans for finalization. So there may still be some things that need to be taken care of as far as the plans are concerned. They haven't even really started any of the construction or any of the property.
How about stormwater runoff? Have they addressed that with the zoning?
That's all addressed on the plans, correct?
Okay.
Any other questions, discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis?
Yes. Agenda item number 17, resolution 2149-2019, land development minor subdivision, Mr. Storage.
Mr. President,
Mr. Siegel.
motion to adopt resolution number 2149, 2019, approving the preliminary and final land development and minor subdivision plans for Haverford Mr. Storage LLC for the properties located at 850 North Eagle Road, Haverford Township, Delaware County, and known as DC Folio 22-01-00366-01, Track 2, and 1000 North Eagle Road, Haverford Township, Delaware County, and known as DC Folio number 22-01-00727-00. Tract 1 has been submitted to expand an existing self-storage building by transferring 27,850 square feet from Tract 1 to Tract 2. Tract 1 will result in a 66,317 square foot parcel containing the existing automotive maintenance facility. Tract 2 will result in a 97,532 square foot parcel containing the existing Mr. Storage facility and proposed 11,645 square foot addition. The subject property is zoned LIN, Light Industrial District, and is located in the 4th Ward. The aforesaid plans were prepared by Herbert E. McCombie Jr., PE Consulting Engineers and Surveyors, Inc., in Broomall, PA 19008, dated May 20, 2019, and last revised on July 5, 2019, subject to compliance with the recommendations of the Planning Commission.
Second?
By Commissioner Siegel, second by Commissioner Oliva. I would just ask Kelly, I know we got today by email a new copy of this resolution, so I assume that something has changed in this resolution since we discussed this at the work session. So if you could let us know what that change is.
It's not necessarily changed, it was revised for clarification.
Okay.
I think my original draft may have been a little confusing, and I had the waivers as an addendum. So they've been included within the resolution itself at this point. And there were, the only other thing that was added is that financial security in the form of an acceptable, in a form acceptable to the township solicitor and an amount acceptable to the township engineer to secure the design and installation of the overall landscaping for the site and the front yard landscape strip on the second parcel on Lawrence Road.
There's something to add, Dave?
Now, the background is the the applicant had requested a waiver from the landscaping requirements. That's a zoning issue, can't be granted by the Board of Commissioners, and therefore we recommend the establishment of this escrow to guarantee that the landscaping is designed and installed.
Kelly,
Thank you.
we're waiving some sidewalks. Where are the sidewalks?
They were for on the access road, not on any of the
Not
actual
on the main
public
streets.
roads.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you for the clarification. Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Agenda item number 18, Resolution 2150-2019, Sewer Module 599 Glendale Road.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to adopt resolution number 2150-2019, authorizing the Township of Haverford to submit to the Department of Environmental Protection for its approval a revision to the official sewage facilities plan for the property located at 599 Glendale Road.
Second.
By Commissioner Wexler, seconded by Commissioner Siegel. Is there any discussion or questions regarding this resolution? If not, please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Agenda item number 19, appointments, first of which is to the Historical Commission.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Brian Ramona to fill an unexpired four-year term on the Historical Commission to expire December 31st, 2019.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Siegel. Are there any other nominations?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Keith Swift to fill an unexpired four-year term on the Historical Commission to expire December 31st, 2019.
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Entertain a motion to close nominations.
So moved?
Second.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, please call the roll and state your preference between Mr. Ramona or Mr. Swift.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Mr. Swift.
Mr. Oliva.
Mr. Swift.
Mr. McCluskey.
Mr. Swift.
Mr. Siegel.
Mr. Ramona.
Mr. McGarity.
Mr. Swift.
Dr. Hart.
Mr. Swift.
Mr. Wexler.
Mr. Ramona?
Mr. Holmes.
Mr. Swift.
Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Swift. Congratulations, Mr. Swift. I don't see him in the audience. And thank all the other applicants for, we had, as we always do, when we interview for these various boards and commissions, a very strong pool of applicants, and it's sometimes very difficult to make a selection. They're all so good, and you wish you had more openings to allow more people to serve. So thanks to all those that did apply, and I would encourage you, there's always openings next year, so encourage people to reapply. Next is the Planning Commission.
Mr. President,
Yes, Commissioner.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Dave Shannon to fill an unexpired 4-year term on the Planning Commission to expire December 31st, 2021.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Siegel. Any other?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Jack Garrett to fill an unexpired 4-year term on the Planning Commission to expire December 31st, 2021.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner McCluskey. Are there any other nominations?
Motion to close?
Second.
All in favor, closed?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes carry. Please state your preference. Mr. Garrett or Mr. Shannon?
Mr. D'Amelio.
Mr. Shannon? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Dave Shannon, please.
Mr. McCluskey.
Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Siegel.
Mr. Shannon?
Mr. McGarity.
Mr. Cannon?
Dr. Hart.
Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Wexler.
Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Holmes.
Attorney Shannon.
Mr. Lewis.
Dave Shannon. Give us the results.
Mr. McGarity, could you restate your, did you want Mr. Shannon or Mr. Garrett?
Oh, I'm sorry, Shannon.
6-3.
6 for Mr. Shannon.
Congratulations to Mr. Shannon. I will see him in the audience this evening. But we look forward to his service on the Planning Commission. What's that? I also thank the candidates that applied. Again, we had a strong pool of candidates, 4 that applied for the position. So we thank them for applying and urge them to consider reapplying.
And I hate to bring everybody down, but that's going to happen fairly soon. I mean, we'll put out, sometime in October, I guess, the request for people and indicate what positions are open and what positions are up for reappointment. And I encourage anybody who interviewed with us, they were all outstanding candidates, and we have had an embarrassment of riches in the last couple of years of folks who are volunteering for these boards, and they certainly outnumber the number of positions we have, but that is not a reason for anyone not to interview. Mr. Shannon himself has been volunteering for a number of years and coming to the interviews, and I was pleased to see him get on the Planning Commission this time, but he faced stiff competition with excellent applicants for that position. So I encourage everybody not to be discouraged by not being appointed. I can assure you we pay great attention to this, and the township and all of your neighbors and friends benefit greatly from your candidacies.
Thank you, Commissioner. Item number 20 is purchases. We have a number of purchases that are under, will be purchased through our bond proceeds to make a number of park infrastructure and other improvements throughout our system in the township. So we'll start with, first is Parks and Rec.
Mr. President,
Mr. Oliva.
motion authorize the purchase of 40 32-gallon green PVC coated steel trash can receptacle liners included, litter receptacles for Recreation Resources USA, Kenna Square, PA, under CoStar's 14 in the amount of $19,150.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner McGarity. Any questions or discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Next is purchase of playground equipment. Lanark.
Mr. President,
Oliva.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the purchase of playground equipment for the Lanark Park from Recreation Resources USA, Penna Square, PA, under CoStar's 14 in the amount of $47,845.75.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McGarity. Any questions, discussion? Please call the roll.
No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to state, it just so happens we don't have, we don't have Mr. Denny, we do have Mr. Barrett here. Last week at our work session, we presented, our Parks and Rec Department presented, photographs of the equipment we're buying. There was a great deal of discussion about these contracts, so I don't want people to get the wrong impression watching tonight that we don't know what these are, or just rubber stamping this. There was a great deal of discussion last week about each one of these contracts. So I encourage anybody who's curious, and I hope we put up on the township website, the examples of the signs, which we're going to get to, the examples of what these look like now. I see in the audience a rendition of the Lanark equipment.
Yeah, if you want to see it, I can bring it up.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
more people do watch this meeting than watch our work sessions, but I just wanted people to understand, not to be fooled by the lack of engagement tonight. We talked about this robustly last week at the work session. And so Mr. Leva is not mic'd. He said this is the equipment that will be placed into Lanark Park. And as I understand from last week's conversation, it has been a while since equipment has been updated there, and it is most welcome.
It is been about 30 years since we've had new park equipment in that park, and that park is going to be, it's the only park in the second ward. The only park with a playground in the second ward, and really necessary for this community.
Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Next is
President.
expense. Commissioner Oliva.
Motion to approve $10,500 to install approximately 370 feet of 6-foot black chain link fence and to remove the existing fence at Richland Farms Park from Super Fence Company, Ardmore, PA.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Wexler. Just for the benefit of the public and the board, this is, we got a bid, came in after our last work session from a different vendor, Super Fence, and we're actually saving $5,005 by waiting, and we didn't need to rebid this because the contract is below the threshold for sealed bids.
That's a,
Advertising was not required, no deadline, so this is a nice savings, and hopefully getting the same product.
that really is a Super Fence Company.
Yeah. So, any other questions or discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. President,
I'll leave it.
motion to approve $18,540 to Performance Signage. Is that Clevis, Ohio? To produce 30 2x4 park entrance signs, $538 each.
Second.
Second.
Again, for the public's benefit, this is a little different than last week's number. Last week, we had a budget of $16,140, so we're adding roughly $2,400 of cost to this particular contract award because we added Haverford Township on each of the signs, which wasn't there before. So that's why the cost is increased by $2,400 over what we discussed at last week's work session.
Good thing we saved 5,000 on the fence then.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a net $2,600 savings.
So,
And the only other thing I would suggest, let's call the roll first.
Mr. President, I missed who seconded that.
That,
I missed the second.
who seconded that?
I believe I did.
Alexa.
I just had a
Please call the roll.
I just had a quick comment, Mr. President. Did we decide on, I know we all agreed that Haverford Township should be added. Did we decide on the color?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. I think now that we have Haverford Township on the sign, and I think 99% of our residents don't know that blue, yellow are the signs of the township. I think it ought to be forest green would be my preference, and I think that was the preference of the original choice of the Parks and Rec. I think we went to blue, that sharp blue and yellow because of not having Haverford Township on the sign.
Tim had sent out some examples of other signs around, and, I'm sorry, had sent out examples of some of the other signs around, in an email to the commissioners. I brought a few of those examples, and they are, the majority of them are the blue and gold. So we were just trying to go uniform, but we initially were favoring the green, but again, because some of these signs we had paid a significant amount of money for, and we will continue to use some of those, the thinking was, do we want to go be uniform with the colors? So that's something that the board might want to weigh in on.
My personal preference would be, if we're going to buy that many signs, would be to go with the sign that's more consistent with the park. That, I found that blue to be a little sharp. Just thought a forest green would be more fitting for a park, and you can show the blue. I just think.
If I might suggest, I think what matters for purposes of board action and sunshine laws is that the money spent is approved by the board and that the issue, spending money for the signs, is debated publicly. I don't think we have to debate publicly ultimately what the signs need to look like, and might I suggest that you send a survey monkey poll to the nine of us?
We did add Haverford Township, so that wasn't.
Well, but we didn't do that by official action, we just all gave him the recommendation that it should.
Well, we can all give him the recommendation on the color as well.
We do, but I don't think we should tonight, because I don't think we have it, we haven't seen it, and we should see examples, including the example of the writing now of Haverford Township, whether we want to say Haverford Township.
He's got that on there. He distributed that.
We've not seen that, have we?
Yeah, he distributed.
Yeah, it was sent to us, but
My emails?
our job is to approve the purchase, and then the detail of color can be addressed separately. I don't think that needs board action.
Okay, I don't disagree with what we did add Haverford Township. That was a board decision. So we could make, it wasn't on there before, so. But anyway, we'll leave it up to the township manager, to Brian Barrett to.
Preference?
Just to make the job more difficult for the township manager, Mr. President, I don't strongly disagree with you, but I do think we have a blue and gold throughout other signs in the township for businesses and parking and stuff like that. So my preference, although I wouldn't be against green, my preference would probably be to stay blue. But
Okay, it sounds like we should stay out of this.
Well, no, actually, I'm not suggesting we stay out of it. I just don't believe we have to have this fight in public, because we've done the public portion of this,
No, I
which is approve the purchase and approve the vendor.
Yeah, can we
and
vote?
approve the concept.
Yeah, let's vote on this, and then we can discuss the color later.
What's that?
We can discuss the color later. Let's vote on what's in front of us.
Vote for the purchase. Oh, please call the roll.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
We'll mark Mr. D'Amelio as abstention because he left the room.
Do not mark him as abstention, mark him as absent.
I'm sorry, absent.
Sorry, only because abstention has.
A different connotation.
implications.
Understood.
Just missing in action.
He stepped out for a moment.
Okay, under Codes Department. Deciding purchase, who wants to?
motion to award the Veterans Field Improvements contract to Gessler Construction Company.
You got the one above it, Codes Department.
Codes Department, motion to authorize the purchase of two 2020 Ford Fusion hybrids from Hondru Ford, Manheim, PA, under CoStar 24006 in the amount of $51,300.
Second.
Second.
Moved by, Commissioner McCluskey, and seconded by Commissioner McGarity. Any discussion on this purchase? This is another step in our phase to transition to hybrid or all-electric vehicles, at least on the administrative side of township operations. Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Contract awards, Parks and Rec, Veterans Field Improvements.
I'd like to make a motion to award the Veterans Field Improvement contracts to Gessler Construction Company, Media PA, with a base bid of $251,500, submitting the lowest responsible bid.
I'm going to second that, but could we have Brian Barrett discuss what that's all about?
So it's moved and seconded. Any discussion? So we have a question. Barrett.
This is the first phase of the work that's going to happen here at Veterans Field. This is to get the football field back from, once this building was built, there was a slight reduction in the field. So in order to get a full football field back there, we have to do some grading down by the pavilion, and we're going to move the backstop that's on Field B, which is in the middle here, back a little bit so it's off the field. That would bring the infield off the field. And that'll allow us to get the full football field in. There'll be some, I think, some retaining walls up by the, small retaining wall up by the pavilion, and they're gonna move the path, that ADA path that was going to the pavilion to get the field in. It'll also create more of a buffer from this side so that fans can be on the sidelines. The second phase of the work will happen, we'll start working on that at the end of August about what we want to do as far as the backstop and then the lighting situation that will be looked at too.
I think you have a sign there for Veterans Field too.
Yes, yes. And
Big
that's
sign
part of,
saying Veterans Field.
yeah, that's part of phase two. And there's thinking of even making something more a tribute to veterans and
Right.
recognizing our veterans, possibly with some type of plaques or something, where we recognize veterans from our community, similar to what you might see on the poles around town. So it was thought, and the park board approved that idea, thought it was a good idea. Someone came and suggested that at one of our park board meetings.
That explanation was wonderful. Mr. Connell, thanks you for your Remembering Veterans sign.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Replacement of sidewalks and paths in parks.
Mr. President,
Leva.
motion to award the replacement of sidewalks and paths in parks to Premier Concrete Incorporated, Broomall, PA, in the amount of $367,140, submitting the lowest responsible bid.
Second.
Second by Commissioner D'Amelio. Any discussion or questions?
Brian, do you know the paths, are they going to be pervious surfaces?
That is not the plan for the paths that are going to be under this awarding. It's going to be, if I'm pretty sure I'm right on that, Chuck, that's going to be, the paths are going to be macadam. And then we're going to be placing blocks in areas, concrete blocks in areas that have street frontage, and some where they're cracked. We did look into that, and the cost is significant.
It's 3 times as much.
Yeah, just given stormwater issues we're having, I think any place we can replace impervious with pervious, we should be trying to do it. And thank you.
Brian, does this include the Thompson Park frontage?
Yes,
There's 14 parks, right? I think it's 14 parks in total.
yes, yes.
Can I just add, Andy, the Premier is the same people who have done different areas of the township, up by the library with the lighting, and Brookline over at Mario's Ward in Lanark, in Lanark and Manoa by Sacred Heart. Andy's Ward up by the Acme, but they've done wonderful work, and I haven't gotten one complaint out of the work they've done, just so everybody knows.
Too bad they couldn't have done our road repaving program.
And just to complete the record on that, they do a wonderful job, but just so everybody knows, they submitted the lowest responsible bid and have so on every other deal that they got with the township, because that's how we do things.
I'm just verifying the fact that they are responsible.
Absolutely.
Work.
Mr. Barrett, Tim blew through the list last week in a way that would have made Evelyn Wood proud. Anybody get the reference? So could you tell us which parks are getting them?
Sure. We're going to be doing work at Coopertown Park, by the school. We're going to be doing work at Elwell. We're going to be doing work at Normandy. We're going to be doing work Merwood Park. Merwood Park. We're going to be doing work at Grange Field. We're going to be doing work at Chatham Glen Park. We're doing work at Richland. We're doing work at Veteran. I'm sorry, Urchins, Lanark, Larnack. We're doing work is West Key. Seeing a little better than I am. And this is for long. Thompson Nature, yeah. We're doing work at Paddock, Hilltop Park, Bailey Park, and Grassland. And some of that work is both, in some areas, it's both macadam and blocks. If there's broken blocks on the street, they replace them with concrete.
Is all of this replacement work?
Yes, we're not adding any new paths. It's
No,
replacing.
we're not making things any better. We're not taking any existing, unimproved or
No, we're not
pervious
adding any,
surfaces
not
and
any
making them.
new paths or, in this. There is talk that in the next phase of the capital program, we would look again at other areas that might need to be addressed. But here we wanted to get the areas that were in pretty bad deterioration, both the blocks and the macadam.
In the case of the paths, we're not widening them.
There's one area, I think, at Elwell, and Chuck probably knows better.
The intent is to replace what's there and make it safe. Like
not gonna
Brian said,
widen.
it's deteriorated in a lot of areas. There are a couple small sections, like I believe on Ardmore Avenue there, that where the sidewalk might be less than 4 foot. All we're going to do is make it 4 foot, and make it standard.
Right.
There's no measurable increase at all.
Okay. Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
No.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Public Works, 2019-2020 salt contract. Doesn't get any more exciting than this.
Motion to award the 2019-2020 salt contract to Eastern Salt Company in the amount of $53 per ton, submitting the lowest responsible bid.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner McGarity, seconded by Commissioner Oliva. And I would like our township manager, since this was not part of our work session agenda, to describe to the board and to the public what this contract award entails.
Perfect. This is a joint purchase with several municipalities in the county, and we are participating in the joint purchase with Newtown Township, which took the lead on this, and they opened the bids, they handled the entire process, and we pay them a prorated share of the advertising and administrative costs.
You remind me, our brine program, we use the salt we purchase, or is that completely separate from salt that we use?
We're still making our own brine, aren't we?
We are.
The brine is made with solar salt. It's a different road salt. It's a little bit finer, cleaner, and we're going to be putting that out to bid probably next month.
Great.
So how do we know how much to purchase? Is it just open-ended, or do we commit to a certain amount, or is it just?
You get a unit price.
Unit price, so we can purchase as much as, or as little as we want?
Yep.
Yes.
We can get it.
We don't have to store it.
We store it. We usually get it delivered during the course.
Store enough to anticipate, get a couple storms. Okay, any other questions on that contract award? Okay, please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio.
Yes.
Mr. Oliva.
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
Mr. McGarity.
Yes.
Dr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Wexler.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes.
And Mr. Lewis.
Yes. Now turn to item number 21, which is a continuation of the citizen forum for non-agenda or agenda items. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on any topic? Please come forward and state your name. Good. Try to limit your remarks to 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Barbara Whitman. I'm Sharon Pennock. I'm a resident of the township. I brought Barbara with me tonight. She's not, but she spends a lot of time here.
Great.
And we brought some documents with us because there won't be enough time to go into enough detail. So would you like us to pass them out now or at the end?
You can do it at the end.
No?
For now, it doesn't matter.
if you do it at the end, we'll listen and everybody won't read it while you're doing it.
I'll go with that one.
I'd like that, please. Larry can listen. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Listen to us first. I like that. So again, so we understand that last month there was a discussion that began talking about plastic bags that turned into a discussion about maybe we could ban plastic straws instead. And though we understand there's nothing concrete in the works yet, we felt it was very important to come tonight to begin the discussion and education about why we find this to be an upsetting discussion to have. I already introduced Barbara. So we certainly agree that we must look to protect our environment. We believe that there are other ways to do this without risking the lives of people who need a plastic straw in order to drink. There are 8 million tons of plastic that float in our oceans. Straws are only 0.025% of that. For comparison, discarded fishing equipment makes up 46% of the ocean's plastic and 97% of marine life plastic entanglement. The number of straws per day that was quoted in Narberth's ordinance is actually likely to be inaccurate, as those were numbers that were used by a boy who was then 9 years old over a decade ago. He proposed then, and he still supports the idea of full-serve restaurants offering straws versus handing one out to everyone, but he does not support the idea of a ban. We have some information that we've printed out for you, and we encourage you to read and go forward, and we'll be here to answer any questions that you have. And I can email these documents to Dan, who can send them out as well and make them available. And I'd like to introduce Barbara to you now.
I have a disability. My disability, I'm fortunate that I have the use of my arms. Many people with my disability do not. I also have many friends who have cerebral palsy or brain injuries where they have movement issues, where they cannot bring a cup to their mouth. So they need a plastic straw, a bendy straw, preferably. The other types of straws that are available that have been in discussion are metal straws, reusable straws, paper straws, silicone straws. All those straws each have issues depending on the type of disability you have. So what we're trying to say is that keep the option there for the disabled people so that they can easily decide whether or not they need to worry about not having straws when they come visit your city. For instance, metal straws are highly dangerous for those with motor movement issues and can also be dangerous if they're drinking hot liquid. Think about coffee or hot chocolate. Reusable straws also have issues like paper straws. I think they disintegrate within the mouth so that it makes choking hazards for people, especially if they have issues with their mouth already. That could be dangerous. McDonald's came out and solved the disintegration issue with their paper straws by thickening them up. But thickening them up made it hard for the machines to digest them. So that kind of, yeah, it's paper, but they can't be composted. So, and silicone and other reusable straws that you can wash, kind of difficult if you already have issues with your upper body and you can't bring a cup to your mouth. So these are things that we want you to think about. The disabled are already limited to where they can go due to the lack of ramps and automated doors and other accessible issues. Banning straws puts undue stress on them because now they must concern themselves with whether or not the town they are visiting has straws.
May I say something? Because I was the one, and myself and Commissioner Lewis came up with this. We didn't make a decision on straws, or we're still working on the, at least I am with Andy, on the ordinance. And quite frankly, I mean, we're doing a lot of research on it, and it wasn't intended to obviously hurt people with disabilities. I think Commissioner Holmes brought that to our attention at one point, concerned about that. And we said, yeah, we would look at that. We are looking at that. There are other municipalities that have banned straws, even in New Jersey. I'm just wondering my intent was to contact the ADA. What do you know, what's their guidelines for it? Maybe you can help me. Have they said that they don't agree with this banning?
I actually don't know if they've made a statement. I'm in contact with a lot of folks around the country, folks who've done New Jersey. In fact, I meant to print that out as well. There's a document I have about why a medical exception isn't an appropriate solution to this. And that was by one of the folks who worked in New Jersey.
Right, and if it doesn't make sense, and we're going to hurt obviously, residents that have disabilities, that doesn't make sense. We certainly don't, that's not the intent.
Right.
The intent was to help the environment.
Exactly, and that's our goal too.
Right, and I get that, I understand, I appreciate you coming here. I'm glad you did,
Yeah.
because,
It tends to be the kind of thing that doesn't get discovered until afterwards, or in the case of Narberth, or many things like this, there's someone who represents the disability community and says, this is fine, but they don't have experience with the particular thing that this deals with.
Yeah, and again, no decision's been made. I mean, we're probably going to discuss this at a work session in September. You're more than welcome to come back.
We will, but
Hopefully
we
we
wanted
have-
to give you some things to think
No,
about
and I appreciate
as you
that,
go
and I'm
forward.
going to look into this. I mean, we're going to have more information as well.
Absolutely.
And then, obviously make an educated decision.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a decision that will benefit everyone,
Yeah,
including.
and we'd be happy to answer questions or sit with anyone that would like to talk with us.
Thank you. If you
We only
could,
have a few
before
minutes
you
today.
leave, if I can get your names and phone numbers,
Absolutely.
I'd be more than willing to discuss. I mean, Andy and I can meet with you at some point.
That would be great.
I guess before September.
That'd be wonderful.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming.
Sure.
Thank you for being here.
listening.
Appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else who would like to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item?
Hi, everyone. My name's Hannah Turlish, and I live at 412 Mill Road. And just before I say something about what I was planning to say, I'm also really invested in font choice. So if we're going to talk about signage and color scheme, I could talk at length about good fonts and bad fonts. So that's also something to think about. But
Would you share that with the rec department?
I mean, just Comic Sans drives me crazy, but I'm really thinking fonts are really important to talk about. But what I wanted to bring up was about the flooding that happened last week. One of my dear friends and colleagues lives on Winfield, and they've lost a vehicle, and they came home from vacation on Saturday and had to come home to mildew infestation and thousands of dollars of damage. And so as someone who really can't do a whole lot financially, I have offered to drive her and her children wherever they need to go. And just, someone, I think, might have been Commissioner Holmes that used the expression, it takes a village, and it really does. So for anyone who's listening, if you know anyone that might have been impacted by that flooding, just doing whatever you can to reach out. It meant a lot to her, and I know it would mean a lot to the other residents of the township that were affected. But also today, I spoke with a neighbor in Ward 7 who lives on Winton Avenue, and he experienced about 6 or 8 inches of flooding in his basement on Wednesday evening. And for the first time in his residence that had happened, and he was concerned that the flooding was because of the repaving that had been done on Winton Avenue that had shrunk the size of the floodwater. You guys use a term I'd never used before, but that opening.
Inlet.
What's it?
The inlet.
The inlet, yes, the inlet. Okay, so the inlet is now smaller because of the repaving, hence the flooding of his basement. And he's concerned about tomorrow night. And so that's one thing he's hoping that might be addressed by tomorrow. But I'm wondering if the repaving in the future, for example, Darby Road, is waiting to be repaved. And is there something that you as commissioners can do to ensure that the repaving that's about to happen won't lead to smaller inlets? That's just what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Turlish raises an excellent point, and that especially this time of year, for folks in any neighborhoods tomorrow that get flooded, be aware as you're opening the doors and windows to your own house and trying to get the water out, that your neighbors next door who may be away for a few days, the catastrophe of 90-degree temperatures inside a closed house with flood water in it, the effects on that house are frankly game-changing and house-changing, and could really result in condemnation depending on how bad it is. So it's very important you keep an eye on your neighbors. It's very important, even if you think it's necessary, to jimmy the door, get their garage door open somehow to try to let air in and let water out in case any house is just sitting there accumulating flood water. We all live within 5 feet of each other in 90% of Havertown, so we all know our neighbors and we all know who's around and who's not around. So keep an eye out for that if we have another flood tomorrow night.
Victor, welcome.
Thank you.
Give us your full name.
My name is Victor Borski. I live 28 Bambi Lane in Haverford Township. I've been there for 31 years, and I'm a part of the Haverford Township EAC. And we're always talking about slowing down stormwater. Dr. Hart and is also a member there. This week, for no good reason, I've been writing down how much rain we've been getting here in my home for the last 31 years. Okay, there's no good reason, but here's my comment. If you stop doing that, it's kind of like giving up on life. So the whole idea is that you just keep writing it down and you say, somewhere somebody's going to care, here's my shot. So last week on Wednesday, I got 3.71 inches of rain in my house. Okay. At the creek.
What period of time?
In that day, okay, okay. I was in Canada, and I did it by over the Wi-Fi, sitting up in Canada at a beautiful lake, watching the blue skies. But the creek at the same time got 6 inches almost, because you can look at it's called Hobo Lake. You can see what they had there. It just shows you I'm about 1.5 miles as a crow flies away from the creek. The difference. Now I've had as much as 8 inches of rain during a hurricane spread out over time. Obviously, we had that rain in about an hour and a half. And what we've learned, if you look at New Orleans, you look at Houston, unfortunately in America, what we do is we try to fix. We don't try to fix it, we just try to correct what happened already. When you do your planning, like we were talking, the young lady just talked a few minutes ago, instead of having a 3-inch drain, maybe we do a 3.5-inch drain, a 4-inch. But we have to plan ahead so that the next generation, the next 10 years, it doesn't happen again, because over my records, we get, let's say, 50 inches of rain a year, and included in that, maybe 20, 25 inches of snow. For the last 2 years, we've gotten over 70 inches in my house. That's a lot more rain, and we're on a good course this year to do it again. So we don't know about climate change, we don't know what's going to happen, but we do know that when you plan, just don't plan to fix it, to plan ahead to correct it. That's my little thing there. Okay.
Thank you. On that point, Victor, if you're interested, I just watched a piece on 60 Minutes the other night on that very topic. I don't know whether you saw it. The Dutch in Netherlands.
Netherlands, that's
It's
right.
fascinating how they have basically solved the problem. There's no flooding in the Netherlands. And that individual, he said, we need to be more proactive as a country.
Right.
In storm.
That's
in terms
actually where
of
I got the
management.
idea from,
Not,
same
not,
thing,
not
yeah.
concede that we've been defeated, but take an attitude that we're gonna win. And he was hired by Hoboken, New Jersey, to do some of their stormwater management.
That's right.
And very creative things they're doing in the Netherlands. So if you're interested, tune in, watch the 60 Minutes piece. It was fascinating.
And that's what I saw from, that's why I didn't want to paraphrase it there, but I had no intention of talking today, but since everybody was talking about the rain, even on our street, it's a cul-de-sac, and at the end, they got hit pretty hard. A couple cars got flooded out, but it's, when Mother Nature wins, we just have to do the best we can. That's all we got from there.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Chairman, it's actually something that Commissioner McCluskey and I were mentioning earlier. So, yeah, we agree. We need to plan, and if we can make changes, that's one thing we've talked about, making changes.
Or we could do what North Carolina did and just outlaw climate change. And yeah. I'm not making that up for anybody who thinks that's a joke. Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah.
To put your head in the sand, huh?
Yeah.
Literally.
They made it illegal. Yeah.
Any other public comment? Anybody else like to address Ross, you had your one.
Ross Anderson, 220 Heatherwood Road. I just want to say that in these plastic straw bans, they usually do build in medical exceptions. So if they have people who need those, the businesses can still accommodate them. But I will say that I do, in general, support any type of plastic bans. I can tell you, you can see me, anybody see me walking through township, I usually have some type of trash in my hand that I've picked up that's been just left in the street, maybe fell off, maybe somebody dropped it innocently. I also want to say that plastic, to tie into what we just talked about, the drainage, that plastic does get in the drains and does cause blockage and back things up.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? Concludes the citizen forum. Now turn to agenda item number 22, which is new business. I have some new business, but defer to my colleagues. Anybody have any new business? Commissioner Siegel.
A couple of items.
Yes.
The first is that, as you read in the press, there is a significant issue with recycling, with the ability to dispose of it, the increased cost of it, and we've been a leader in this township with single stream, but it is an issue, and I would like to suggest, and I've spoken with Mr. Berman and some of the members of the board already, that we designate a working group perhaps of commissioners, a couple of members of the Environmental Advisory Committee, and staff to try to come up with a plan for the future so that we don't find ourselves suddenly without a recycling facility or at costs that are so extraordinary that it's going to cost us far more to dispose of recycling, and it may not even be recycled. So I'd like to suggest that we do that so that we try to get ahead of the issue because it is a big problem.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, and maybe the EAC could give us some advice on, maybe it's a subcommittee of the EAC with some members of the Board of Commissioners and maybe some representative from Bryn Mawr College or Haverford College or whatever it might be can add.
Yeah, Andy, actually, I talked with the EAC, so there's a couple of people who would be interested in working on that.
Okay.
Certainly would take part as well.
Good, okay. Well, how do we, so do we get direction from the EAC as to what this task force might look like, or do you want to make a recommendation?
Well, my
Mr. Siegel?
recommendation is that we have a couple commissioners, representatives from EAC. If there are people from the college, they've helped us with other things, Bryn Mawr in the past, for example, or Haverford. And also, I think we need staff because they understand the day-to-day issues.
Danny doesn't have enough to do.
So I think it needs to be that type of thing because this is not something that is going to be one meeting and a solution. It's a complex problem.
No.
And expensive.
And the Fifth Ward resident, Josh Brockman, has been working with the EAC on recycling, and I think, he recognizes the challenge.
Bring composting in there also?
Yeah, I think that's definitely should be part of it.
I'm happy to volunteer from the board, and I don't know if anyone else.
I would.
Yeah,
Don't mind, Mr. Siegel?
It's not my committee, but I'm just suggesting it.
I would like to be a part of it.
Emilio, Hart, and Siegel. Anybody else want to be part of it? I would like to. So we'll maybe get a couple members from the EAC. I'd like to see some participation, maybe from, Victor Dene or Josh Brockman or somebody from the college as well.
We had some interest also from Bryn Mawr College, a professor there.
Yeah, that's Victor Dene.
Yeah, Victor Craig.
Yeah.
I'd ask if we have the township manager designate appropriate staff to do that.
Appropriate staff. Okay. Okay, well then, I think that's an excellent suggestion. Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. Anybody else have any new business before I
have a couple more.
Okay.
The next one is an issue that I learned about that Radnor has addressed, and then I found out that our police department is also dealing with it, which is creating a safe exchange zone for people who make online purchases. And I'll defer to Deputy Chief Hagan because I didn't realize till tonight that they were on it.
Yes, we received a few suggestions, one from Dr. Hart and also yourself about doing the exchange. We never officially had an exchange zone outside the police station. We are in the process, the chief ordered the signs, and we're getting ready to roll it out once the signs come in and we get the Public Works Department to put the signs up. We'll do a full rollout with a press release announcing the safe exchange. It's a lot of people do it now with the custody exchanges, and people do it, but it'll now be official exchange zone out there.
Terrific. And lastly, but briefly, we've talked in the past, we've had discussions and votes on this board relating to the way our township code is written concerning sidewalks with either new construction or with certain renovations. I would like to suggest that we consider changing the ordinance to make sidewalks mandatory, and then it has to be waived by the board rather than the current language, which is a bit sort of wishy-washy, for lack of a better term. And we would bring up an ordinance, and it would also, since it's zoning, require
For new development or?
but we had the issue with Pets First, whether that should be.
Yeah.
There's a property in my ward that is potentially, it's an issue as to whether on existing properties where there's either a subdivision or something that under our code now, the sidewalks are I'll call it optional, or can be waived, but I think this board should at least consider making the policy one way or another that, because there was, I gauged a significant sentiment to making that mandatory, and then it would have to come before us for a waiver rather than the other way.
So this would be triggered by when someone sold their house, or what?
No, it's a subdivision or something that has to come before planning and zoning. If you sell your house, that would not change.
You wouldn't have.
There's a potential subdivision in the 4th Ward in an area where there are no sidewalks, but a lot of people walk. We had the Pets First discussion here a couple of months ago about that, and there were philosophical differences that I think this board should debate as an issue rather than try to address it as part of a sub-issue of a planning commission recommendation, because I don't think that's where it belongs. I think it belongs in a more full discussion. Whether we decide to do it or not is different, but I really think it deserves this board's sort of imprimatur, whether it's going to be mandatory and something that gets waived or not.
Yeah, I think it's confusing. I have two developments on Steel Road, 2 houses on one side, 2 houses on the other, a couple doors apart. One side was required to put sidewalks, so I have 2 houses with sidewalks and no other sidewalks on that side. The opposite side that has sidewalks down to Belfield Avenue was not required to put sidewalks in. So I don't really know between zoning and planning which end is up anymore.
Well, it was revealed in the Pets First situation that it all depends on what the planning commission had for breakfast that day. I mean, I literally, depends on who screams the loudest in the room and how much of a fight the developer puts up. But Dan's correct. The statute imposes on us the duty to make sidewalks. The planning commission makes recommendations, but depending on how educated the people dealing with the situation it dictates whether they fight it and come to us or whether they just accept it. So, I mean, we continue to have this checkerboard hodgepodge of sidewalks to nowhere, as we joked about with Pets First. And, there are other commissioners who feel very strongly that starting today forward, we should have sidewalks every chance we get. And I don't think that's incorrect. But as Dan said, we should talk about it as a board, and we should have the law. Be the law that everybody applies to, and if there's a waiver opportunity, it should be under very specific circumstances, and let's face it, it should be fairly dire circumstances.
I don't have a problem. We can have that discussion at our next work session.
Well, what I think we need to do is sort of have two things. One, we can have the discussion. We have to have a draft of the ordinance.
Yeah.
And if we're going to move forward, since it is zoning related, we would need to also have a public hearing if we move forward on it, I believe.
Well, that could be done by your ordinance, correct?
It fits into zoning.
Okay.
To double check. And I-
So do you want to take that before your ordinance committee, Dan?
Yeah.
Come back with a recommendation? Okay, any other new business or any other commissioner?
Mr. Commissioner,
Yes.
we discussed in more detail, because it was appropriate in more detail in executive session, but in general detail out here for the public, I would like to ask the board to instruct our township solicitor to appear on the board's behalf and represent its interests at a zoning hearing board this Thursday with an issue on Lancaster Avenue, the Fifth Ward. I don't think I have to be more specific than that. So unless my solicitor instructs me now to be more specific or not to be more specific. Great. Then I would ask the board, I would move that the board instruct our solicitor to represent the township's interests at this Thursday's zoning hearing board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Commissioner Holmes, for that. Appreciate it. Any other new business? I just have one ordinance number P17, 2019, amending Chapter 175, Section 92, Schedule 17, parking of commercial vehicles prohibited at all times, rescinding this parking of commercial vehicles prohibited at all times on Moreland Avenue, both sides from Lee Circle to Doe Road. So would somebody make that motion, or anybody have any questions about this ordinance?
What do you-
Is there an urgency to
What motion do you want for,
No, this is
you want to rescind, no parking?
rescind, yes, the commercial. Yeah, well, the residents had requested it, so I said we tried to get it under new business.
Don't we have to advertise it?
Not out of the norm, I don't think. We've taken up other.
No, well, I mean.
It should be on your.
Today, we had a certain emergent issue about Thursday because, we couldn't wait till the next meeting to do that. An ordinance, it's fairly uncommon for us to pass ordinances in new business that we've not.
So if you want to hold off, we can hold off till September.
Is that okay?
That's fine, yeah.
I mean, in the meanwhile,
not a big deal.
let's not
You can't win.
find any commercial vehicles in that block,
Somebody screaming.
since it seems to be the
Well,
state.
it's a signage that's been up for 20 years, and it's not a problem. So it's sign pollution, really, at this point. So, but we'll take it up. Okay, any other new business? Okay, turn to item number 23, other business. Start with Commissioner D'Amelio.
Thank you, Mr. President. As many in the First Ward know, we have a new traffic pattern at Walnut Hill and Glendale that is really working great. I want to thank Pannoni and Associates. I want to thank the police and Dan for their work on that. So far, it's working good. I spoke to Mr. Pannoni, and the goal is to see if the improvements continue before we paint the do not block the box there at Walnut Hill and Glendale. So far, it seems to be working very well. Chief, do you have, Deputy Chief, do you have any updates on that? I mean, you've heard good positive things, or?
So far, yes, with the traffic's been a little bit on the lighter side because most people are out of town, but
Yeah, this week especially.
so far, reviews have been pretty good on it.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Dan, for Public Works. I just want to say thank God for HADA. That group is just unbelievable. And there are angels on our shoulders here in Haverford. So again, thank you to them for the work that they do. It is a disease, and they're working very hard in the community to help all families that are afflicted with this disease. I want to thank the police and our volunteer fire companies for the National Night Out. It was a beautiful event again, as always. A lot of residents, a great canine expedition that went really great. The kids love the dogs. It's amazing to me how the dogs just love the kids back. And a lot of different events were there. So it was really good again. It's good to get the community out and meeting our volunteer fire companies, our paramedics, and our police. So thank you for hosting that. Of course, we talked about the flooding, and obviously there was significant flooding throughout the township. And as I stated earlier, I believe this is happening more and more throughout the township. And as Commissioner McCluskey and I said, I think we need to plan better, and hopefully that's going to happen. So if we need to make inlets bigger, or we need to add something there, or even check how the roads are milled, if that's affecting anything, then we need to start looking at these things before, to avoid our residents being adversely affected by the amount of rain that just keeps coming. And it's coming again tomorrow. So those of you, again, I think we can't stress it enough, if you could take any steps to make sure that if you have a drain in your area or an inlet that's blocked and you know it, to let the township know that you can be our eyes and ears in the streets there, because we can't be everywhere. I mean, Public Works can't be everywhere. And they're out there during storms, and you guys do a great job, Dan. I mean, we have these significant storms, we have significant trees down and flooding, and your guys are there out, just like the volunteer fire companies are, and the police. You're right there with them. So hopefully your guys stay safe in this weather as well. September 25th is my first ward meeting, community meeting, which is back for the fall. And State Representative Mike Zabel will be there, including township officials, and that starts at 7 p.m. at the Manoa Firehouse. Again, that's September 25th. I was asked by a resident to talk about a big bingo night fundraiser supporting the homeless. It's a fun night of bingo for a good cause. Tickets are $30 per ticket. You can call 610-833-4454 to purchase tickets, or you can go online at caadc.org/tickets/ you must be 21 years or older to attend. It's the Full Into Bingo fundraiser, which supports the homeless shelters for families and individuals of the Community Action Agency of Delaware County Incorporated. The event includes 10 rounds of bingo with great prizes, plus a jackpot bonus round. Also, door prizes, raffle baskets, and other surprises. This event is Saturday, September 14th. The doors open at 5:30, and bingo starts at 6:30 p.m. We're at St. Demetrius Greek, hope I said that right, Orthodox Church, 229 Powell Lane, Upper Darby, PA. And there's plenty of parking. It says, please bring your own food and drinks. So if you're interested in that event, you can certainly go online and take a look at it. As far as the plastic ordinance is concerned, as I said earlier, we're still looking at it. We're still trying to develop it, get educated on it. I certainly want to talk to you two again. And as I said, I think Commissioner Lewis and I would be open to meeting with you. If I can get your phone numbers at the end of this meeting, that would be very helpful. Also, usually former Commissioner Chris Connell will talk about this, but school's coming back in session, so please drive very carefully. Children will be out before you know it. Some schools are in session in 2 weeks in some communities. I'm not sure about ours, because thank God my kids aren't in the schools anymore. So please drive safe, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Demille. Commissioner Leva.
All right, I would like to thank Public Works for a great job done, and our emergency management coordinator and the deputy coordinator for a great job done throughout the township, not just in the Winfield section where they did a fantastic job, but in all throughout the township. It was a bad storm, and they did a great job. What I wanted to, I talked about it earlier. Some of the, like Commissioner Lewis was saying and Victor was saying, we have to, I have, at my house, I have rain barrels. We have rain gardens throughout the township. For anything that you can do to keep water on your property and to keep it from going down into the storm sewer, the better off we are. Making the storm sewers bigger and bigger and spending more money is not solving the problem. Keeping that water from getting into the sewer system, into the stormwater system, would reduce the amount of water going in through rain gardens. And our EAC is doing a fantastic job with the rain gardens and the amount of rain gardens that they're putting out there, rain barrels. Call me, I'll deliver one to your house, and you can use that. I use it to wash my car, for the garden, all that sort of good stuff. We use those for to cut down on the amount of water that's coming off of my property. And if everybody does that, then we don't have these issues when we have thing. It's just little by little, we can try to solve some of these issues. And I want to thank these ladies in the audience over here from Lanark Park who took it upon themselves. I went over there, spoke to them, and said, we need to do something here in the park, and they took the bull by the horns, talked to the appropriate people, planned the whole thing out, and did just a wonderful job. And thank you. And from the people of Lanark and all those kids who are going to use that wonderful park, I thank you, ladies, very much. So thank you. I have nothing further.
McCluskey?
Sure, just to update residents, somebody brought up Darby Road earlier. That is scheduled to start being paved this week. So hopefully by the end of this week, early next week, PennDOT will be through your particular neighborhood and we'll have a paved road. As I've said to multiple residents who have asked, Eagle Road is still scheduled to be paved in 2019. That's from what we've heard from PennDOT. We just don't have a date as of yet, but it is scheduled to be paved. I would like to just touch on and thank the residents of the 3rd Ward, the 5th Ward, and 6th, 4th, and anybody who travels through the Haverford Road, Ardmore Avenue area. That bridge being down is going to be an inconvenience for everybody. And the first 2 weeks were pretty rough, I know, for a lot of people who commute in and around that area. It does appear to have settled, and I think a lot of people I noticed, especially in areas in my ward in particular, and I'm sure others experience the same, but most drivers seem to have an understanding, especially going through the neighborhoods that you are traveling through, residential neighborhoods. And I'd ask you to just keep that in mind, because when school's back in session and after Labor Day, we're going to experience another rough patch with that as everybody adjusts their different patterns. You know, people will be traveling to different schools or traveling to different daycares, or they'll have a different morning routine. So the traffic patterns are going to have to adjust again. And just to note, you know, we've put up additional signage and the police have been out in force. And I can tell you there have been a lot of tickets issued. You know, so I hope people recognize that we're doing everything we can to make it as not as big an inconvenience as it can possibly be. It's a needed infrastructure improvement. The bridge is down, and they're working to hopefully get it back up as soon as possible. Along those lines, just to remind everybody, we are going to be, and I'm sure Commissioner Lewis will talk about this, but we are going to be having a follow-up meeting, a public meeting on September the 4th at 7 p.m. in this room. It'll be very similar to the one we had in April, where I will open up the doors and it'll be able to accommodate anybody who wants to come and ask questions. We'll have the contractors here, we'll have PennDOT officials here, and it's sort of, we'll be able to discuss things that we have seen so far and things that we have additional concerns about. Please, I don't think any residents have, but please don't hesitate to contact us if you have concerns, and hopefully, if possible, we can address it. If not, we'll do everything we can to make it as convenient as possible. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Siegel?
The first thing I just want to address is residents should understand that the flooding we had was extraordinary. The township is doing what it can, but in the 4th Ward, for example, we had flooding in areas that have never had flooding before, and that is what can happen. And the township is working to address it, and I thank them and everyone else who's been involved. The other thing I just want to touch on briefly is that tonight is 2 years from Charlottesville. And it's certainly not an anniversary, but it is certainly a reminder of some of the events of 2 years ago and the events that have gone on now. We really need, and I'm not going to go into the gun debate and all of that, But we really need to remember the need for discussion and communication rather than the hateful language that is fomenting so much. Read the New York Times front page today and look at that, what they've placed on there, the article and the main piece. And you'll understand sort of where things in this dialogue have devolved. And it is a significant issue. So, we can do better. This board isn't going to solve the problems by ourselves, obviously, but it really is a significant issue. The last thing I just want to mention and remind people is that scheduled for a vote next month is the future of the building, the Brookline School. And the reason I bring it up isn't so much for the vote, as we will be discussing it, we will be taking public comment, but I have received a significant number of emails, and I've seen things on social media, and I don't respond to posts on social media, that have indicated that the public didn't know about Brookline School or that this board had been less than transparent. And that's simply not the case. We learned about the availability of the Brookline School in March of 2018. And then Township Manager Larry Gentili, in the late summer, early fall, attended a school board meeting where we publicly stated our interest in the building. We made that interest known to residents. It has been discussed at numerous meetings of this board. In January and February of this year, we voted, publicly of course, to acquire the property and discussed that we would be discussing potential demolition, potential future use, including use as a library, and that we had agreed with the school district that we would only use it for those types of use and we wouldn't, sell the property, etc. So statements that we haven't been transparent, statements that we have been hiding this or have not publicly discussed this issue are simply not true. And those people who have disseminated it have either not paid attention or have other motives that I don't understand. We've had numerous meetings of this board where we've discussed it. We've discussed Commissioner McCluskey at length about the issues with daycare there, and we have continued to make certain that the public is aware. And in September, we will be discussing this issue again. But to those who have accused us of being less than open about this, we've talked about it since over a year ago at numerous meetings. We've had reports from our township engineer. We've had reports from the staff. So that's simply not true. And I want people to keep that in mind, that we'll have another discussion and then we will, vote or do as we feel is best in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eagle. Mr. McGarity?
Yes, I'll just say what Mr. Siegel just said is, truthfully, we have not hidden anything, and we've been out in the open in that. Mr. Siegel and I are not in agreement with each other on what's to go there as far as Brookline School, but will come out in the very near future. But as far as to say that we haven't done anything or we've tried to hide this, that's just not true at all. It's been out there, and I think just about everybody in the areas of Brookline know about what's going on at Brookline School. It's just a matter of myself, I'm not for a library at Brookline School. There are others who are. And that will come out, and of course the people will have their say on how they feel about it. And I don't think that, just like tonight, we're bringing it up about next month's meeting, and anybody that has anything to say about Brookline School, please come and say it. And we'll make the decisions after we hear everybody who wants to be heard. So that part, I just wanted to bring out about Mr. Siegel and I on that particular issue. But I do agree with him that we're not hiding anything, and he is the head of the committee, and I'm on the committee, and he has not hidden anything there. I got to say that for Dan, in fairness to what's going on here. Now, I just wanted to say I did receive, and the commissioners all received a letter from Mrs. Borelli, and I just want to say, I'm not going to get into the letter. It's 8 pages long. I just want to thank her for her comments. The letter was very well written. It was not sarcastic to anyone at all. And I appreciate the fact that people take the time to do that. Then the other thing that I did want to bring up, But right now, I guess I'm getting old and I'm losing thought there. It's not coming up here, so we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hart?
I wanted to give an update on the Manoa Bridge project. The contractor will be pouring concrete in the early morning hours of Thursday, so after midnight till about 6 or 7 in the morning. The concrete needs to be poured at a time when the temperature is less than 80 degrees. Unfortunately, it's going to be noisy in that area, but the good news is it should be done. It's a one-night project. They're also going to be in late August doing a lot of work on the approach roads to the bridge, which is going to mean traffic is going to be slowed around Powder Mill and Carricong. But the contractor expects that will take about a week. The good news is it looks like probably the bridge will be open by late September. And after the road is open, they will then be removing Old Manoa Road Bridge and changing the traffic configuration. And finally, I just wanted, Dan, thank you for all the work you've been doing with the flooding and everything in that area. We really appreciate it.
Can I just interject? It just came back because of what Mr. Hart said. Listen, Danny and the crew at Public Works has done a great job. The tree gang, they've been out there. They're talking about all these different things. The tree gang has been out there doing everything. And all the people on recycling and trash, those fellas, they've gone through a rough time with the recycling and the trash getting knocked over with the bad weather. And you still don't see any of those cans or bottles or anything laying around because guess what? They got it all up. Somehow or other, they got it all up, and there was a mess there to get. So thanks again for your work, fellas. And of course, Joe Hagan, you haven't said anything. If you want to say something, say it, but you've done a good job with that police department down there, Joe. And I know Viola's here right behind you. Watch out.
Okay, now, Mr. Wexler, Commissioner Wexler.
Follow. But you can't say enough about Public Works. This heat and humidity, all the work, you just pass on our thanks from all the residents. It's been phenomenal. My meeting, my quarterly meeting will be September 26th in conjunction with the Hilltop Civic Association meeting. That's a Thursday night at Bon Air Firehouse. And to follow up just on what Steve said about the kids coming out, this week is going to be a busy week. PIAA sports start this week. You're going to see kids going to football, field hockey, soccer, golf, all the fall sports start this week, tryouts. I'm a golf coach. I got tryouts starting tomorrow. I got kids coming all week. Football started this week. Vacation's over. So there will be kids. You'll see them biking, walking, heading to high schools and middle schools and the fields for their tryouts and practices that start tomorrow. So drive safe and pay attention with a lot more kids on the street. So that's all I have, Mr. Lewis.
Commissioner Holmes?
Mr. President, thank you. Between the last meeting and this meeting, my father passed away, and I just wanted to thank all my colleagues on the board and all my colleagues on the township staff and all the constituents and friends in Haverford Township who reached out and were very thoughtful and made this very difficult time more tolerable for my family. I just wanted to publicly thank you all for your support. Steve, for a moment of silence at the start, I appreciate that. My father would not object to sharing that time with the people who prematurely lost their lives in those terrible, terrible things in those terrible mass shootings in the last couple of weeks. So that's all I have, except to remind everybody, as every other commissioner has, school is starting again. Please, please, everybody, drive carefully, be patient, budget more time to get where you need to go, and have a safe and pleasant start of the school year and the rest of your summer. Thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you. I just have a couple items. First off, Haverford Adult School Class registration opens today. They have some wonderful programming for our township residents to consider, and I hope you'll check it out. Also, I want to thank my colleagues on the board for your support of the resolution allowing and funding for speed bumps. We have them installed on 5 streets in the 5th Ward already, and probably a couple more to follow. I think they're going to be a very effective tool in helping to mitigate the impact, particularly the speeding on some of these cut-through streets. So thank you to my colleagues for their support of that. Also, I want to let the public know, as Kevin said, Commissioner McCluskey said, we will be having the meeting with PennDOT on September 4th at 7 o'clock. I would encourage people to come. I've been taking inventory of all the comments and questions, complaints that I get by emails and phone calls, and I've been funneling them either to our police chief and Deputy Chief Hagan. Kevin McCluskey and I have met with the chief and deputy chief and Dave and others over right after the closure for a couple of weeks, and I expect every Labor Day will continue because I expect the problems will get more significant once the vacation people are back and school buses are on the road. So, but we have had discussions about traffic enforcement. We've had questions about adding additional signage where appropriate. We also have the chief and the deputy chief had a lengthy conversation with PennDOT about traffic, timing of traffic lights. That seems to be the big issue that everybody's concerned about, particularly at the intersection of Haverford Road and College Avenue, the bridge. So PennDOT is doing a study. I'm not sure where that study stands at this point, Joe, but they're studying every traffic light, I guess, along Haverford Road, and they're going to be coming back. We are not, just so people know, we don't, the township doesn't control the timing of the traffic lights. That is, even the ones that we own on township roads, they're not, the timing of those lights are not determined by the township. They're determined by PennDOT. So that's all their decision. So we've been working with them where we, and actually our police department, to their credit, they're out of their cars and actually manually controlling the light where they need to do that. And they'll continue to do that in the future if they have to, but we only have so many officers on the road at any given time. It can't be at every intersection. So the real solution is to make sure the lights are timed appropriately. And I think what they're looking at is adding, they might add 3 to 5 seconds at a given light. And the problem is you can't, once you add seconds to a light in one direction, it affects the other direction. So it has kind of a ripple effect at other intersections as well. So they'll be adding, as I understand, adding some, Joe, I don't know whether you have any comments, but I know that, I don't know where they stand in the study, but they're going to be adjusting the traffic lights, and they're going to continue to adjust traffic lights as needed.
That's correct, Commissioner. They're currently looking at all the major intersections around the closure, and they're looking to if they can possibly add a couple seconds here and there without overall affecting the other streets. As you know, as you take time away from one, it's going to cause an issue for another. But PennDOT is working closely with us. They assure us that they're going to have it probably like all straightened out by September when school comes back in. So we'll be back in touch with them prior to our meeting on the 4th.
Yeah, and so the questions I've gotten, I've funneled either to the chief and our township manager or PennDOT. So come our meeting on September 4th, hopefully we'll be prepared to address the questions that have been raised by at least, I think, my residents and other residents, and hopefully address them to their satisfaction as best we can. And certainly there's some choke points that are just going to be, I think, Coopertown Road and Darby is clearly a big choke point, and there's not much we can do about that intersection. And the other choke point is, unfortunately, at the other end of Coopertown and College. Fortunately, there's a 4-way stop there, or a three-way stop, so at least people can get out there. But that section of Coopertown Road is it's going to be very, very much a choke point. So, so we look forward to seeing everybody on the 4th. Just want to echo Commissioner Siegel's comments about the Brookline school process. I think at first I'd heard, quite frankly, I'm offended by the whole notion that we haven't been transparent, because we've been fully transparent at every step of the process. Has been open. We've encouraged, had a number of public meetings. Actually had a public work session where we sat and listened to everybody's comments. Every last comment from every resident that had an issue, and we, this board has been nothing but transparent. We'll continue to be transparent throughout the process, and we will be at our meeting on September 3rd. There'll be a presentation by the property committee to be followed by another public meeting for anybody and everybody that wants to speak on the topic related to Brookline School and give us their opinions and thoughts. So I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Siegel, because they're right on the mark. And we have been nothing we've been completely transparent at every step of the process, and we will be as we make decisions going forward as it relates to the future. Once we decide what to do with the Brookline School itself, the next step will be discussion about the library and what happens whether it's going to be renovated where it presently exists, whether we're going to put a new library at Brookline. That's going to be a completely open process with opportunities for public comment, and we're going to look at all options, and any option we look at, you'll have an opportunity to look at too, and give us your feedback on. So that'll be phase 2. We'll be making a decision about the future of the library and where it's going to be. So and that's a little ways off, but just want to assure the public that we'll continue to be open and transparent at every step of this process. So, and I think that's all I have. Is there any other business to come before?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.